Hey guys, it's Mr. Schmidt here, and in this video, we're going to graph perfect competition. And so I'm just going to tell you up front that this video is probably going to be pretty long. I don't know how long as I'm recording it here, but um, I feel like it's important for me to go slow here and really help you understand how to graph it and also how to analyze it and what it means, because there's a lot of working parts here. Um, and so, yeah, that's what we're going to do here. So feel free to watch it in parts, come back to it later, however you want to do it. But just wanted to throw out that warning at the start. So here we go. So graphing perfect competition. So with perfect competition, we encounter something we haven't really dealt with up to this point, which is what we call side-by-side graphs. In other words, when we're graphing perfect competition, we have one set of axes and then another set of axes side by side. And the reason for this is because when you draw perfect competition, you are drawing both the market and the firm. And I want you to get in the habit of just going ahead and drawing both, even though this unit is going to have you analyzing the firm a lot more than the market. Now, this at first may seem overwhelming, but the good news is, outside of one curve, you've drawn everything we're going to put on these graphs before, which is really helpful, right? So let's go ahead and start with the market. So in the market, we have quantity and we have price. And then here is the demand curve. And here is the supply curve. So the good news is, ever since Unit 2, you've been drawing perfectly competitive markets. They're basic supply and demand graphs you've been drawing for weeks now. And so that really makes us a little bit easier, right? So we have supply and demand, and then where they intersect, the equilibrium quantity is also what we're going to call QM, which is the market quantity. How much in total all of these thousands of firms in perfect competition are producing in total if we add them all together. And then the per unit price each and every one of those firms are selling their product for would be what we would call P1, right? We'll call it P1. So that is the price per unit that has been decided in this market. And this is the price that every perfectly competitive firm has to use. And so what we have here is we have the market and we have one representative firm that is participating in this perfectly competitive market. Now, to show that the firm is going to take the price from the market, we're going to draw a dashed line over to the firm to indicate that they are only going to be able to charge that price. The next thing we want to do is draw the demand curve for the firm, because just like with a market, there's a demand curve and there's a supply curve. Now, we're going to go ahead and start with the demand curve. And so the demand curve, as you saw when we did the table in the last video, would be perfectly, let me see if I can draw that again. Perfect, that's close enough. Perfectly elastic, right? Because they can only buy it at one price because that's the price that producers are going to sell it for because, well, that's the market price, right? They're price takers. And so this is the demand curve. But as we saw before with the table in the last video, it's also marginal revenue. And as we saw in the last video, it's also average revenue. And as we saw just now, it is also the price, P1, right? Now, if you rearrange those letters, they spell out Mr. DARP, which is a great way to remember that the demand curve is also marginal revenue, average revenue, and price. So Mr. DARP is a way to remember that. The axes, which we haven't labeled yet, we're going to do quantity on the x-axis like before, but on the y-axis, we're going to do a dollar sign because we're not just going to do price, we're also going to show the firm's cost in a minute. And so that's why we need the quantity and the dollar sign, I should say. So we've got the demand curve. Well, what about the supply curve? Well, for now, we're going to kind of ignore the supply curve, which seems a little weird, but we're going to use a curve to kind of approximate it a little bit, and that'll make more sense in an upcoming video. So for now, just kind of trust me here. We're going to bring in marginal cost. Now, why would we bring in marginal cost? Because remember, in order to determine QF, which is how much the firm is, this individual firm is going to produce as their quantity, we have to find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's the profit maximization rule. Remember, you produce the quantity where they're equal. And so that's where marginal cost and marginal revenue would intersect. So let's go ahead and bring in marginal cost. It looks just like it did in the last unit. So that's pretty handy. We already know how to draw that. And then where they intersect, right here, is the profit maximizing quantity. So we're going to call that QF. It is the quantity this firm is going to produce to maximize their profit or minimize their loss. We don't know if they're making a profit or a loss yet because we don't know about total cost yet. Now, as it turns out, we do know about where total revenue is, right? We know we can find total revenue and show it on this graph right now. Well, how would we do that? Well, remember that total revenue is equal to price times quantity. So how would we show that as a visible area? Well, we would say, okay, it's going to be a rectangle. Quantity is the base of the rectangle, price is the height, and then that area is total revenue. So I'm going to show it to you and shade it in, and then I'm going to have to erase it to add some other stuff, but it's going to be this box right here. That all is total revenue. Okay? So one thing you need to be able to do with perfect competition in the firm is to show where is total revenue, where is total cost, and then where is the profit or loss that the firm is taking or making. So that's total revenue. And so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that area there so that we can go on to the next part here. So we've got total revenue, but remember, to know if it's a profit or loss, we need to bring in total cost. And you may be thinking at this point, oh, okay, Mr. Schmidt, let's bring in the total cost curve, right? Because that's total cost, right? Well, the problem is that if you use the total cost curve, you're not going to be able to find total cost. You're actually going to be finding a number that would be greater than total cost. I know that seems weird, but the curve we actually need here is average total cost. And you'll see why when we go to calculate total cost with it in a minute. So average total cost. So remember, that's a U, and it's minimized when it goes through marginal cost. And we drew that in the last unit. So for this example, we're going to put average total cost. We're going to start the dot down here. Okay, so I like to go ahead and put my dot first. And then I like to, when I swing up to make the U, I like to take those ends really far up, and that'll really, really help later. So I'm going to swing it up here like that, and then swing up there like that. And hopefully I drew that to Derek's satisfaction. So shout out to Derek if he's watching this video right now. So that is average total cost. Okay, so now that we have average total cost, we can find this firm's total cost. And you may be like, well, how do we do that? We have average total cost, not total cost. So how would we find that area? Well, remember that one of the formulas for total cost is average total cost times quantity. So once again, this is an area of a rectangle, of a box. The Q would be our base. Average total cost at that quantity would be the height. So what we need to do on here is find the average total cost at QF. So what is that? Well, I'm going to use green here to kind of show it to you. It's right here. Okay, that is the average total cost at QF. And then we're going to take our dashed line over. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, this is average total cost at F. okay, at quantity F for the firm's quantity, okay? And so it's going to be that area, the base, so this distance, times the height, this distance. And it's going to be this area right here, okay? So that green area is average, or is total cost, right? I took my average total cost times my quantity. That area is total cost, right? And now that I have the total revenue area and the total cost area, I can find, one, am I making a profit or loss? And two, how big is it? What area would it be on this graph? And to do this, I'm going to use multiple colors here. So I'm going to bring back in the total revenue area that we found just a few minutes ago. And so it's, remember, total revenue was all of this, right? It was all of that, okay? So it goes over the green and outside the green too. So which is bigger here, total revenue or total cost? Well, it's total revenue, right? There's more yellow than green. Now, how would I figure out the area of the profit? Well, what I would do is I would say, oh, okay, I know that profit, we'll use the pi symbol for profit, is total revenue minus total cost. So what I can do is just, in my mind, take out the green, because that's total cost. And in doing so, I'll be left with profit. And so I'm going to undo that formula and my scribbles there. And so if I did that, profit would be when I'm shading here in red, this area right here. Okay? Another way to think about that is to find the area of the profit box. It would be QF times profit per unit. Profit per unit would be this distance right here. This would be profit per unit. The base would be how much the firm is producing, and that would get me profit. So one really quick way, and let me undo all of my scribbles. So just give me a second here so you can enjoy me watching and doing some of the stuff I just did. One way to know that whether you have a profit or not, really quickly, just by looking at the graph, is if your price is greater than average total cost at F, then you have a profit, right? So average total cost is here, price is here, which is greater? Price. It's higher up the y-axis, and so we have a profit. So that's a really quick way to visually see that, right? So that's if a firm is making a profit. I'm also going to show you, what about a firm making a loss? How would that look? And if you want to pause the video and draw all this and see if you can figure it out and label total revenue, total cost, the loss, go right ahead and we'll see if you're right. But I'm going to go ahead and draw it here. And I told you it's going to be a long video. So let's go ahead and do that in the next slide here. So once again, we're going to do two axes here, side by side, not perfect, doesn't have to be. Quantity and price. We've got my demand curve, my supply curve, and I like to go ahead and say this is the market. Important to go ahead and label that. And then I've got my market quantity that all firms combined are producing at a price per unit of Q1. Over here in the firm, quantity and dollar sign, because the dollars is both price and cost. This is my firm. The price gets taken by the firm, so I use my ... dashes to show that. My demand curve, Mr. DARP, is perfectly elastic because every consumer is willing to pay the exact same price, no matter what. Marginal cost, the Nike swoosh. Where those two intersect is the profit maximizing quantity. Very important to remember that. So that's QF. And then the question would be, if I want to do a loss, where would I put average total cost? And the answer is it would have to be above the price, right? Which kind of makes sense, right? Because over here, the price was greater than ATC, profit. If it's less than ATC, a loss. So I'm going to make my big old dot. And again, we'll see if Derek's pleased with my U. swing, swing. That looks pretty good. And we'll call that ATC. All right, and now I've got I feel bad for the left side of my ATC. It's kind of squiggly. But that is my average total cost curve. And now I got to figure out where's total revenue, where's total cost, and where's my loss. Now, first of all, let's just think this through. Which is going to be greater, the total revenue box or the total cost box? Well, it's going to be the total cost box, right? Because if I'm making a loss, my costs must be greater than my revenues. So let's start with total revenue. Remember, total revenue is price times quantity. So quantity is going to be the base, price is going to be the height. So it's going to be this area here that I'm shading in blue. Okay. And then what about total cost? Well, to get total cost, I need to find my ATC at QF. So I'm going to extend my dots up, okay? And it's a tight squeeze there, the way I drew it, and then over. And this is my average total cost at the quantity F. And so to get total cost, it's average total cost times Q. Q would be the base of my rectangle. Average total cost of F is my height, and that will give me total cost of producing F, just like this was total revenue of producing F. And so I'm going to use yellow for this, and it's going to be all of this. Okay, so I can clearly see that my total cost is greater than my total revenue. And so where is the loss? Well, the loss would be get rid of the smaller area, total revenue, and what am I left with? So what's the extra total cost that's going to cause the loss? And I'm going to highlight the outside of the box in green here. This would be the loss. Okay? So that's how you would do a loss in a perfectly competitive firm. Okay? So really, and sometimes they'll give you numbers. They'll say like, okay, this is 8, this is 10, the price is 7 or whatever, and they'll have you do stuff with that as well. I do plan to upload some practice for you guys as well, so you can work with this. But that's how you would do it if it's a loss. Now there is one other possibility, and I'm going to show it to you here, and this video is already going on 18 minutes, but I told you it'd be a little longer, and that's if the firm breaks even, which means an economic profit of 0, or what we know now as a normal profit. So what would that look like? Okay, feel free to pause the video and see if you can figure it out. But again, real quick, remember, loss would be if the price is less than ATC of F. Okay? Now, last side-by-side graph for this video. And again, the best way to get good at this, guys, is just practice. Just practice drawing these over and over again. Like, the reason I can draw them fairly quickly is not just because I'm an econ teacher and I majored this in college, although that does definitely help, but because I've drawn them so many times. They just get stuck in my memory. And so if you're going to get good at this, practice, 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 just like anything else. So market quantity, P1, it gets taken by the firm, market, firm, and then, oh, that's so bad. I really wish I had like a ruler to help me with this. There we go. Marginal revenue, demand, average revenue, P1. I often get students asking me, do we have to include all 4? I would. Yes, please. And then marginal cost. And then where they intersect is my profit maximizing quantity for this firm. Remember, QM is going to be way bigger than QF, right? Because there's thousands of firms in the market. Okay. So the question is, how would I show break even, right? Which is a normal profit, economic profit of 0. Well, for that to be true, total revenue needs to equal total cost, right? Because when I subtract them, I'll get 0 as the answer. which means the total revenue box and the total cost box have to be, well, the same box, and therefore no difference, and therefore no profit or loss. So simply put, it's just price times QF. And that's also going to be equal to ATC of F times Q. So what we need to do is add in average total cost to make this work. And the way we do that is we make average total cost the same dot where marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect. And then swing up, average total cost, and then we can draw, or we can shade in our box. This is total revenue, and it's also total cost box, right? So that is breaking even. So with break even, price equals the average total cost of F, okay? If it's a loss, price is less than ATC of F, and if it's a profit, price is greater than the ATC of F. So sometimes they'll just give you the graph and have you quickly recognize, is it a profit or loss? That's something you want to work on as well. So my advice to you, obviously ask questions, get help from me, whatnot, but just practice drawing these over and over again. We are certainly going to practice a lot with this. I would not expect you to watch this video one time and have it all down perfect. I encourage you to watch it multiple times. There's tons of videos on YouTube as well if you want to get other people explaining it to you also. But this is a very, very important skill we need to be able to do, so I encourage you to practice with it. So that's all for this video on modeling perfect competition. Until next time, have a great day.